strength that its constitution and its polity is based around the dispersal of power. And it's been the reason that the U.S. has become prosperous and free and strong. If you look around the world and you look at the really wealthy, successful states, 8 out of the top 10 are tiny little micro-states. It's the Monacos and the Channel Islands and the Bruneis. The reason why the U.S. is up there as a wealthy and successful country is because it's governed like a confederation of statelets. It devolves power to a very low level in a way that very few other states do. And to see what I mean by that, compare your constitution, your way of doing things, to the way they do it in the European Union. Whereas you begin from the proposition that power is vested at the lowest level and is lent upwards on a contingent basis, the EU, in the very first line of the very first clause of its foundational treaty, the Treaty of Rome, commits its signatories to establish an ever closer union. So we, if you like, have got the opposite of the Jeffersonian principle. We've got the principle that power should always go upwards. And the result of that is that the European Union has become sclerotic, it's become inefficient, it's become uncompetitive, it's a shrinking share of the world market. So just look around at the rest of the world, guys, and you can see how much more advantageous it is to have a system that allows power to be exercised at the lowest possible level.
Congressman Paul, Mr. Hannan uses a terrific phrase. He says that power was loaned from the lower parts to the upper parts, from individuals through the states to the federal government on a contingent basis. Now, we all agree with that, Mr. Hannan, you and I, that the power can come back. But if I get one email a day, I get 100 saying, Judge, what can we do? What can people do to get power back from a federal government that utterly rejects the footprint that the Constitution lays out for it? If the power was given to the federal government on a contingent basis, Congressman Paul, and if the contingency is that you stay within the confines of the Constitution, something they haven't done since George Washington was president, how do we get that power back?
Well, ultimately, the very best way would be to educate the people to understand our history and understand why nullification as well as secession are proper positions to hold. But right now, the practical answer is probably going to come essentially when the system fails and states will have to take over their prerogatives and do what they are supposed to do. One analogy that I've used that sometimes will influence both conservatives and liberals will be that how many people think that we should be bound to belong to the United Nations even though we might pay more, proportionately speaking, of the dues than anybody else, and at the same time turn over more votes to states that pay nothing. And we have already boycotted some of the events of the United Nations. And, still, as supportive as the people are in America for the United Nations, 25% think we should be out, but I think a large number of those 75% think that if it gets too bad, we have this right to leave. So I think it's this understanding that it's not permanent, that we came together in a voluntary fashion, and there's great traditions. If people on the left would study secession, they'll find out that New England states wanted to secede a long time before it was considered to be an ultra-right wing issue, because the New Englanders didn't like to be under control of the Southerners. They wanted to separate themselves. So I still think studying history and philosophy and our Constitution and just plain morality will be the ultimate solution. But in the meantime, I think the practical answer is going to be the failure of the federal government is going to mandate that the states as well as the individuals take upon themselves to take care of all their needs.
Mr. Hannan, before I let you go, Prime Minister Brown recently says British jobs for British workers. And President Obama says we're going to save Chrysler so that Americans can buy American cars. Do they know what they're talking about?
I mean, I think they do know. I think the really depressing thing is that they're both intelligent people, and they both understand how the last thing the world needs at a time like this is a retreat into protectionism. And they have these various summits where they agree that with each other, and then they all go home and play to the domestic audience like this, which is incredibly depressing. I mean, there are all sorts of ways in which the G20 countries, which keep on promising to work against protectionism, have imposed various non-tariff barriers. I mean, they may have been within the letter of the WTO, but the rules on competitive tendering, subsidy is a kind of protectionism. I mean, we don't call it that, but it works exactly the same way. It's the last thing you need. You know, of course, supporting Chrysler can be good for Chrysler, but it is always bad for the American economy overall if you are protecting one part from competition elsewhere. It makes that bit of the economy flabby and inefficient, and it makes everybody else pay more to keep it going. And we all know that. You know, our leaders are not illiterate, that's the most depressing thing. If they were stupid, you could forgive it, but when they're being cynical, it's much harder.
Before I let you go, and I'm going to invite Congressman Paul to reply directly to you, are you as frustrated with the collectivist big government mentality in the European Union as Congressman Paul is with the collectivist big government mentality in the American Congress?
I would gladly swap my problems for his if I could shut my eyes and wish for it. You know, of course you've got problems. Every country in the world has problems, but nothing like the level of socialism, of intervention, and of absence of democracy that we have here. I mean, just one example. We're applying a new European constitution, which takes even more powers from the member states and centralizes them in Brussels. This constitution has been rejected 3 times in the ballot box in referendums. 54% of French voters said no, 62% of Dutch voters, 53% of Irish voters. And You know what? They're just disregarding those results and carrying on anyway, and the decisions are being made by people that nobody gets to vote for at all. Now, you know, I can see that there are problems with the U.S., and if I were there, I would share a lot of the congressman's critiques. But you should, you should give thanks to the visionaries who wrote your constitution that you don't end up with a system like ours, and you really would understand what over-centralization means.
I know you have to go, Mr. Hannan. Thanks very much. Congressman Paul, any reply to that? Certainly they're not going to circulate a new constitution around, are we?
No, I think it's great. Mr. Hanna gives us good excuse to be optimistic, because now we can say, yes, as bad as we are, we're not as bad as the European Union. And I guess maybe that is true, because, you know, they've been socialized for a long time, and they're moving toward a huge centralized control of all those countries. But nevertheless, we still face a lot of problems. As a matter of fact, this is a worldwide phenomenon, the attack on personal liberty. As well, it's a worldwide phenomenon on the financial problems that we face, because this is a worldwide financial bubble based on the dollar being the reserve dollar standard. So this is a worldwide problem that we face. And, of course, if there's a collapse of the dollar and a collapse of liberties, it won't be just here in the United States and not just Europe. It may threaten the entire world, and who knows what it could deteriorate into. So I would say that we have the tools and the ability and the knowledge to know what we should be doing. So let's hopefully change things to the better without having any violence.
And Ron Paul, always a pleasure. Until next Wednesday on Freedom Watch, Daniel Hannan joining us from England. Always a pleasure. Until you can come back on Freedom Watch as well. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm happy to be joined now by 2 of my ideological, intellectual, and fraternal colleagues. Lew Rockwell is the American libertarian political commentator and the founder and chair of the Mises Institute. Tom Woods is the New York Times best-selling author of 9 books, the most recent of which is the hottest book out today. And Tom, I say that as someone who released a book just 3 weeks ago. But the hottest book today is Meltdown by my friend Tom Woods, who's a senior scholar at the Mises Institute. Meltdown explains in language that everyone can understand where the government went wrong and how it is the cause of the financial crisis under which we all suffer and burden today. Lew, Tom, welcome back to Freedom Watch.
Judge, great to be with you. Likewise, nice to talk to you.
Thank you. Lew, we'll start with you. This morning we opened up the Wall Street Journal and we learned that last night the Treasury Secretary announced that he has found a way for the Treasury Department to regulate the salaries of executives at banks that did not accept TARP funds. Now, the regulation of banking executive salaries as a condition of receiving the TARP funds is unconstitutional in my view, but I can at least understand the argument. What conceivable argument could he come up with? And what obstacles are there to that argument to regulate executive salaries at banks that the government didn't give a nickel to?
Well, I guess part of it is the argument that he won't